Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the October Diamond Valley Writers Guild meeting, our last meeting of 2023. What a long year. Glad that we're coming to the end of it because we've got a great program for you guys next year as well. Zoom participants, please keep your mics muted until you're requested to unmute or it's your turn to speak. We have a really tight agenda today, a lot to accomplish. So it'll be really important if you have your readers list, if you're a reader today, to make sure that you're ready to read as soon as you're announced, that there isn't much lag time in between. So first off, I'd like to announce that we do have a logo winner. Can we put the logo up on the screen? And this will be our logo moving forward into the future, and it was by vote. This is the one that everyone liked. Let's see, they're getting it up there. I'm gonna move on to the next thing while we're getting that up there, because it might take a couple of seconds. Let's see. Lynette, why don't you go ahead and do your report regarding shout outs, YouTube, and Nano Challengers, and then we'll go back to the logo.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. We are working on our monthly shout outs. So hopefully everybody who had a book or something big and exciting, a celebration happening in
Hold on,
September.
Lynette, just for a second.
Sure.
Okay, Lynette, go ahead.
Okay. If you had something exciting happen, like a book launch in September, please go ahead and send out your blurb, your sales page information, and a copy of your cover to the Guild. And we will be posting those at the end of the month, October 28th. The shout outs will go out, and we can celebrate your successes and share information with the rest of our mailing list. Our YouTube channel is active and going great. We have all the meetings for this year posted all the way through last month when SK was talking to us. So really exciting. Go out there. Feel free to share the links. And if you missed any meetings, great way to catch up. Nano National Novel Writing Month is coming up in November. If you're thinking about participating in that, we have a support group. We meet Tuesday nights in the evening, and if you are interested in having that kind of accountability, we keep it under an hour. Everybody says what they've done the past week, what they're planning to do the next week, and we just kind of rah cheer for each other. It's a great way to help stay motivated during November. So just send an email to the Guild, say, yes, I want to be included, and I will add you to the mailing list. Did I cover it all? I think I did. So I'm going to kick it back to Michelle. And I will put some of that information in that for you guys also.
So this is our new logo, all of our branding, our website, anything that's going out. This was what the majority of people chose. So congratulations to the submitter on that one. We have a new logo. We'll have a website update and report from our Vice President, Kevin, who is also our webmaster. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey there. Hopefully Liam's got my screenshots ready for you guys. But the website's going good. Obviously, I will be revamping the website with the new logo here in the next few weeks. But the website is a great way for the community to keep in touch and work together during the months that we don't have our monthly meetings. So if you got the screens ready, I was going to show everybody how to create an account on the website and what you can do with it, and which ties in with the member book system.
Okay, they are getting it up for you right now, so hold on just one moment. Here it comes. There you go, Kevin.
Okay, as you can see on the top right corner, just above the menu, there's a little person button. It says login next to it. If you click the login, you'll go to the next screen. which is a nice big login button or login screen. Nope, number 2. That one. So you can sign up to the site using your email address, or you can link it in with your Facebook or Google accounts. Now, I imported our member list to the website a week or 2 ago. So I heard some of you got emails saying that you had an account. If you try to log in with your email account and it says you already have an account, just do the lost password function and you can reset your password. But if you go to the next screen, that is the actual screen to create an account. As you can see, it's pretty simple. First name, last name, email, set your password, and whether you want to use the newsletter or not. This is not the same newsletter that Michelle sends out. This is potentially something that we can use for to replace it and have the website kind of manage all the subscriptions and newsletters and all that stuff. So if you go to the next screen, that's how to reset the password if it says you already have an account and you don't know the password. That's because I accidentally created you one. Sorry. Okay, so once you get logged in, you'll notice that on the next screen there. I can't see the next screen. Up at the top right where it said login now shows my picture. And that says that I am now logged into the server. And then you can click on the forums button, which is directly below your picture, to go to screen 6. Which I can't see. Oh, there you are. Okay, so you're on screen 6 there. And now most of the information that I write, I put a lot of the instructions in the questions and answers forum, which is the very top one. But another function that you can do with your membership is you can create a user profile page. And if you go to screen 7, that's what a profile page can look like. It's like literally your own author page. You can put your bio in there, a picture, a background. You can set all your notifications for what you want in there, all that stuff. And if you go to the next screen, once you create an account and a profile page, we can link in your books. So then, therefore, when somebody looks at your profile or your books on the member book page and they click on your author page, it will take them to your profile, which has all your links to your social media, your website, all your books, all your forum posts, any comments you've made, everything. So it's a great way to keep in touch with the community when we're not meeting on a monthly basis. That's pretty much all I have for the website today.
Thank you, Kevin. You're doing an amazing job as webmaster. I really appreciate all your hard work. I know that the members do as well. Next
I got
up,
something else.
What?
I forgot to mention one other thing.
Go ahead.
As of this morning, we got control of the Straight Jackets magazine, so that content is now back online. So all the Straight Jackets is back up, and I will link it back into the website here right after the meeting.
So if you've had any of your personal websites or blogs linking to articles that you had published on Straight Jackets, you may need to go in and refresh those links, but they should be up and running by later on today. Okay, member successes, project starts, completions. We'll start with Dennis. Here, Dennis.
Thank you. A year ago, folks, you were very involved in the 2-cent piece. It is the story of a young girl living during the Civil War who actually has an opportunity to get some of the first coins with the words "In God We Trust," and she ends up being giving those coins away. And what happens to those coins to her brothers and another young boy is the rest of the story. Well, it just became a #1 new release on Audible, and I have a blog tour that I'm involved with that is promoting the book, and the rave reviews are amazing. #2, with regard to that book, the narrator was fantastic and has really been well received. So if you're interested in the 2-cent piece audiobook, please go ahead and check it out. And it has little chimes that allow a child to read through the book and then be able to go ahead and hear the chime and have it read to them. The next thing is, I've been on a podcast this past week, and I'm going to be this next week on a YouTube interview. And the reason is because my new book is coming out on the 30th of October. It is called Marcus and the Emperor's Coin. And my genre is children's Christian picture books. And so this is also a faith-based book that has to do with young Marcus, who goes on a mission for the Emperor of Rome with his father. And when he travels, he ends up visiting a mine. He makes a coin, and all of my books have to do with coins or currency. So fortunately, what is happening is the narrator on that book is famous. His name is James L. Rubart, and he happens to be a Christie Hall of Fame winner. And so he is well known in Christian circles. So that is a very big bonus. And I am recruiting now for my launch team. It ends October the 30th of this month. But what that means is a person would go ahead, and I have sheets available for the people in the room, but it involves receiving a digital copy before everybody else. There are Amazon gift card, $100 and two $25 gift cards. There's behind the scenes look at what a book launch looks like. And then there's some graphics on Facebook that a person would pick up, because there's going to be a private Facebook group, and it would only take 3 to 5 minutes a day to grab some of those. And if you'd like to post them and spread the word with regard to Marcus and the Emperor's Coin. Thank you so much, but I'll tell you, although I have a lot happening, I'm very invested in seeing what we do here with the Guild and want to support you all. And thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, next up is Bob Norman.
Good morning, everybody. I have a book that'll be coming out next month. It's a collection of 36 short stories called Tall Tales, Wicked Lies, and The Awful Truth. It's broken into 3 sections. One is current stories. I'll be reading one of those later today. Section 2 is kind of a comical look at the Old West. And in Section 3 is some of the stuff that went on with the Navy when I was up at China Lake Naval Weapons Center during the early 70s. So it'll be coming out in printed form and ebook, and have more details later. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Bob. Is there anyone else in the room that has a writing-related success they would like to pitch today? Okay, how about on Zoom? Okay, go ahead, unmute.
Is that me?
It is you.
Okay, well, I have published last month my first children's picture book. It's called Twinkle Toes. Oops, I have to turn off it's about Ellie, the little dancing elephant. And I don't know how to do that. I'm here not at home, but anyway, I'll just read quickly what the blurb is on the back. Oh no, it is almost time for the big dance recital. And the lead dancer has been hurt. How will the show go on? Ellie the elephant knows all the moves, but she doesn't feel like a real dancer. She feels self-conscious and scared. Will she be brave enough to save the performance? In this sweet, heartwarming story, we learn the importance of hard work, practice, and being kind, both to others and to ourselves. And so it's called Twinkle Toes. And I'm excited about it because I love children's picture books, and this is my first one.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who has a writing-related success they would like to announce? Go ahead and remute if you could. Okay. All right, then moving on, welcome. Volunteers. We need volunteers for 2 projects. First being the library set up here in the room on once a month on the 3rd Saturday. If you are local and could volunteer to assist, learn how the equipment is put together, we would really, really appreciate some volunteers. Also, the Anthology Committee. Next year in 2024, the Guild is ambitiously planning on trying to release an anthology of original works. And we would like volunteers, if you're interested in being involved on the committee, who decides what the theme is going to be, what the word count's going to be, and submissions, then just email the Guild, let us know, or talk to a board member. 2024 membership renewal reminder. Lynette, could you put in the chat the information, or Kevin, put in the chat the information on how to pay your dues? Coming up into the end of the year, we're starting to accept renewals. Jessica is here in the room today. She can take your check or your cash if you want to renew for 2024. Otherwise, you could do it online. You can send it to the P.O. Box. See, I think that's about it on announcements. Are there any other things that I've missed on announcements? Okay, it looks like everyone is good to move on into our election. Excuse me. So once every year, we elect officers for the Guild. And this year, it's the offices of President and Treasurer. So if you have someone you would like to nominate, hold up. We're going to go into our actual annual general meeting, and then I'll turn this over. So we officially call the general meeting to order for 2023. And Kevin, it's all yours.
Sophia put it in the minutes that the meeting started at 9:47 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And this is the annual general meeting elections for president and treasurer. In order to, for the election, only current 2023 paid members in good standing are eligible to run for office. Paid members may not nominate another paid member for the office. And nominations must be seconded by a paid member, at which time the nominee may accept or decline. And we do encourage multiple nominations. And candidates will have the opportunity to address membership if they choose. And then we call for a vote. And if there's only one candidate, it's just a show of hands and people can't oppose. And if there's more than one nominee, we will do a ballot, which will be handled by Sophia at the library and by Lynette on Zoom. And the election results will be almost immediate. So let's start with the position of treasurer. Do we have any nominations? Okay, I see a nomination.
Yes. Hello. Hello. Yes, I make a nomination for Jessica Bruce.
Okay. Do I hear a seconder?
That was Bob Norman. He seconded the motion.
Okay. And does Jessica accept or decline?
I accept the nomination.
Are there any other nominations? In the library, on Zoom?
We see no volunteers stepping forward.
Are there any opposed? No? By a show of hands, who votes for Jessica to remain treasurer? Okay. Jessica, you won the title. Okay, now the position of president. Do I hear any nominations?
I nominate our current president, Michelle Bassett.
Brenda nominates. Do I hear a second?
Bob seconded it.
Bob seconded. Michelle, are you okay with that?
Do I have a choice? Yes, I will accept the nomination. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations? Going once? Going twice? Gone? All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, looks pretty unanimous. Any opposed? No? Congratulations, Michelle. You're our president for the next 2 years.
Thank you, everyone. I foresee a lot of exciting things happening for the Guild in the next 2 years. Okay, let's go ahead and close out of our annual general meeting and elections at, what time is it? Someone give me a timestamp. At 9:50, and we will move into our annual JoLynne Memorial Prose reading, and Jessica will be emceeing that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well this beautiful Saturday morning. Today is the second annual JoLynne Buehring Memorial Prose reading, and we have a lot of people to get through, so everyone who is reading, I did send you out a list. Everyone in the room, there is one on the wall in case you've forgotten who you were behind, but we have lots of people to get through and lots of good prose to read today. So without further ado, I will hand it off to our first reader, Erin Schalk.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erin. Thank you so much for the introduction and having me today. The piece I'll be reading is called The Unswept Floor. It's a short story. It's an example of art historical fiction, and it's designed for middle grade readers. So the artwork in question in the story does actually exist. It's called The Unswept Floor, and it was created in Rome during the 2nd century AD. We don't know the origin story of it, so essentially this short story makes a fictional origin story for the piece. Livia sat on the floor, letting her fingers brush through the rough, unfinished stone. "This isn't possible," she murmured to herself. "I can barely see what Father's made." Livia squinted her eyes until her temples ached, trying to concentrate on the portion of the floor Father had already installed. All she could see were light and dark blurs. "Titus's broken arm will heal, but I can't say the same for my eyes." Livia pounded her fist against the floor's rock-hard surface. Instead, her hand plunged into a tray of tiles, which felt like small pebbles. "Mosaic tesserae," Father explained, sweeping up the scattered pieces. "All different colors. We're going to create images on this floor, just like putting together puzzle pieces." He scooped his hand into the tray, filling Livia's palm with colorful glass and marble fragments. She lifted her hand, and the tesserae dissolved into a fog in front of her eyes. "What kind of images?" Livia asked, feeling a wave of fear crest from her stomach and clamp down on her chest. "We're working on one of the largest, most beautiful homes in all of Rome. This is the dining area, a special room called the triclina. We're going to make images of food. Well, scraps of food, really. Nuts, shells, pieces of bone." Livia's eyes widened. "Food that you throw out?" Livia asked, stunned. "But this is the 2nd century. Don't we have better manners?" "Yes, we should. Funny, isn't it?" Father smiled, his face glowing with delight. Livia closed her eyes. She had held many foods in her hands before, traced the textures of fish scales, memorized the different shapes of chicken bones. But recreate all of these details with thousands of pea-sized tiles? Impossible. "Father, you have to wait until Titus heals. Have him help you like he always does." Livia's head hung down. She gazed at the wide, empty floor, which faded into the color of a storm gray ocean. "I can't fill so much space with such small details. My eyes can't," Livia said. "It's going to take too long for your brother's arm to heal. The mosaic has to be installed before then." Father clasped her hand. His hands were large, with maps of large veins that ran from the base of his fingers to his wrists. Hard-working, rough-skinned hands. The hands of an artist who had spent decades perfecting his mosaics, whose talent had been celebrated by the emperor himself. "I can't do this without your help. You know, I think you're the cleverest child in all of Rome," he continued. Livia stiffened. Father was the only person who felt this way. For as long as she could remember, the neighborhood children teased her, even thrown pebbles and pieces of rotten fruit at her, all because they knew she couldn't see things coming. "Make me a promise," Father said, smoothing back the curls that had sprung loose from Livia's headband and fallen over her forehead. "Today, trust in what you can do." "I promise," Livia replied, her voice barely rising above a whisper. Livia let her fingertips skim across the surface of the stone floor. Father had already begun placing some of the images of scattered food. Livia's fingers traced a crab's leg, a cluster of partially eaten grapes still connected to a vine, even a small snail shell, all made from tiny tile fragments. Most of the food is colorful, Father explained. The grapes are made from violet tiles, and the crab's leg is a combination of bright red and red-orange. When you add in the white background, the food will stand out even more. Father's hands moved expertly across the floor. Within moments, he set down amber-colored tesserae in a crescent shape, making the process look effortless. This one is a bent chicken bone, he explained. Ha! I call this mosaic the unswept floor. Livia shook her head. Who would want their dining room floor to look like a permanent mess? Maybe someone who is a disgustingly messy eater. Sounds like Titus. Livia's face split into a wide grin. Father burst into a roar of laughter that echoed across the empty dining hall. Chuckling, Livia gathered a handful of white tesserae from the tray. She carefully began to lay these background tiles one by one around the pieces of food. She let her fingers slide across the smooth surfaces, feeling the tiles form a grid pattern around Father's images. They fell into a meditative rhythm for what seemed like hours. Father continued to create images from glass and marble fragments, forming a mouse nibbling on a scrap of walnut shell. From time to time, he stepped away from the dining room floor to check his sketches before returning to make the next piece of rubbish. Meanwhile, Livia orbited Father's work, filling the background with tiny squares of white marble. The process was fairly easy until she got close to the outline of one of Father's images. Most of the foods were curved or jagged, and try as she might, Livia's square tesserae did not fit well around those irregular shapes. I'll make them fit, she said. First, Livia tried packing squares around a teardrop-shaped oyster shell, but as she pressed harder with the base of her palm, she knocked some of the tiles loose. 3 tiles popped into the air from the pressure, then fell to the ground with a clatter. Heat crept into Livia's cheeks as she swept her hands across the floor, trying to find where the loose tiles landed. It's no use, they're nowhere close. Anxiously, she hammered her fingernails against the floor's surface and tried to scan the dining room. But whenever Livia felt panicked, her eyesight grew even worse. She blinked and squeezed her eyelids closed, trying to clear her vision. What am I going to do? Father looked up from his work. Something wrong? He asked. It's the tesserae. I can't make these squares fit around the food's edges. Livia kept her head down as she dug her fingers deeper into the tile tray. If she looked hard enough, maybe there were some different shapes. You're right, Father said. We can't force a square straight edge to fit alongside a curve, even if we really want to. One moment. Father strode across the length of the dining hall to his workbench. He returned with a thin rectangle of white marble about the length of Livia's forearm and 3 times as wide. We have to create the right sorts of shapes, and we have to put them in the right places, Father explained. He pulled a hammer from his tools and struck the marble. Fragments splintered and fell from the rectangle, scattering like spilled stones across the unfinished floor. Livia gasped. Now you try. Father placed the hammer into her hand. No, Livia stood firm. What if I hit it too hard? What if I ruin this? You won't, Father replied. Livia inhaled, steadying herself. She gripped the hammer and carefully tapped the thin stone. Cracks spread like the lines of a spider web across the surface, but no piece fell off. A little harder. If you say so. Livia struck the marble again, and a shower of white shards hit the ground. Aha! Livia laughed as she gathered nearby fragments into her tunic. You see, Father said, clapping his hands. Now be careful. This marble breaks cleanly most of the time, but there can be some sharp edges. Livia nodded as she plucked an irregularly shaped piece from the ground. It reminded her of a pentagon with curved edges. This piece is perfect, Livia said. It fits right into the center of the snail shell. She pulled another marble fragment from her tunic and carefully traced the edges with her fingertip, memorizing the size and shape. This one is long and narrow, almost like a crescent moon. I think maybe it will fit into the crab claw. Livia let her palms skim across the finished areas of the mosaic until her fingers landed on the crab's claw, its fishhook-shaped curve. She slipped the marble into the center joint. Sure enough, a snug fit. Father stood alongside, watching Livia's work and confidence gain momentum. The white tile background began to spread across the dining room floor. I never had any doubt, Father said. When you let your fingers see, you see more than many people with perfect vision. Did you know that? Livia stood up from her work, shaking her head. When she was farther away from the tile, she could see the mosaic's images slightly better. Blushing red cherries, pieces of green olive, violet grapes on the edge of decay. Just like discarded scraps of food the neighborhood children had thrown at her to mock her too many times to count. Scraps that left sticky fruit juice and pulp clinging to her hair and running down her forehead, stinging her eyes as she stumbled home in tears. The memories flashed so vividly in Livia's mind that her nostrils filled with the foul stench of kitchen garbage. Her throat tightened. No, Father, I didn't know. Father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Believing is seeing, no matter how you happen to see. After Father and Livia finished the unswept floor, a grand banquet was held in the triclina. Livia wove her way through the dining room, inhaling deeply as she tried to identify foods by their aromas. The feast was delicious, with fresh seafood from the coast, mixed with expensive fruit and spices from across the Roman Empire. Father gathered a plate for the two of them to share. Lobster claws, fresh oysters, ripe berries, and plump figs. What would you like? Let's try everything, Livia said. To keep her balance in the bustling room, Livia braced herself against the edge of the dining table and took careful steps. Her toes bumped into something salty smelling and soft. What is this? Oh, it's a piece of fish on the floor. There's more, Father said. Scraps of garlic, chestnut husks, garbage, food garbage all over our beautiful mosaic. Livia strained to keep her voice low. Well, it blends in well for now. Father let out a deep belly laugh. But remember, this feast will end and the food will be forgotten. A work of art, our art, can live on for generations. Father pulled a sphere from his pocket about the size and weight of a plump orange. It was a magnifying orb. Everything that shone through the rounded glass looked much larger. Thanks to our earnings, I just purchased this treasure. Will you keep making mosaics with me? He asked. Livia lifted the orb to her eyes, letting in a bright new world to see. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. That was a beautiful story. Next up, we have S.K. Murphy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be reading the prologue from my memoir, The Tainted Legacy of Bertha Gifford. I don't even know if I can follow that. That was such a beautiful story. But I'll try. For long moments, there is no other sound in the car but the swishing metronome of the wipers across the windshield. The rain is steady but light. Cornfields stretch out on either side of the road, though the terrain is not flat. Off to the east, I can see cottonwoods growing along the riverbed. We'd found the narrow bridge easily, just as the clerk in the small convenience store had described it. And when we'd pulled up to it and stopped, Mom had perked up, the light of recognition shining in her eyes for the first time in days. I remember this bridge, she said, hope in her voice. She hadn't been here in many years. At her comment, I'd glanced across to the passenger side of the small rental car and wondered if, had I reached the age of 76, I would remember events that had happened when I was 10 years old. It's true that we remember events quite vividly and for many years if they are catalyzed by intense emotion. My intuition suggests that my mother must have suffered great anguish and loss over the events that had begun on an August day so long ago. Having negotiated the single-lane bridge, we travel slowly down the curving country road, looking for the farmhouse where my great-grandmother had lived with her second husband, Jean Gifford. Anything look familiar, I ask, after we have gone some distance past the bridge in silence. I'm not sure, she replies hesitantly. It all looks the same. I mean, it's all just typical farm country. She pauses, then sighs, irritated. I don't know. The house is 100 years old. I don't know if it would even still be there after all these years. Her eyes become distant, less hopeful again. My mother, Ernestine, was a young girl when she lived in this rural community with her grandparents, Bertha and Jean Gifford, and their son, James. Just 4 years older than my mother, Jim was more like a big brother than an uncle to her. Life on the farm where she could read, fish, and ride her black mare to her heart's content must have been idyllic. Chances are she would have grown up there had her grandmother not been arrested for murder. On a humid August day in 1928, an unfamiliar car pulled into the dirt driveway of the farmhouse, and a solemn-faced man emerged. Jim and Ernestine, their game in the yard interrupted, followed him to the door as he knocked and was permitted to enter the house. My mother, who was 10 at the time, trailed her grandmother into a bedroom and watched as she quietly powdered her face, then left the house with the man. Her grandmother and this stranger climbed into the car, which moved off down the gravel road, the sound of the engine slowly receding in the quiet morning air. Now, on an August day in 1994, we drive down a country road, my mother and I, searching for more than a house that may have been lost to time. My mother is searching for answers to questions she has had for decades. I have come first in search of the story which has never been told, and I am equally driven by the need to discover anything which might help me understand more fully my ancestry, the chemistry and biology from which I have been derived. More specifically, I need to know if this family history and genetic legacy defines who I am or will be. Questions hover between us now as we look for the house, which is both crime scene and beloved childhood home. A sense of gloom envelops me as I peer through the rain on the windshield and begin to feel immured by the dark clouds and severely isolated countryside. This looks familiar. My mother's unexpected exclamation jars me from my thoughts. What part? I ask. The scene seems unchanged. I don't know, all of it. Her voice trails off. Then, if this is where I think it is, we'll go around a bend and the house will be there. All my senses are alerted. It's a white farmhouse with a red barn, she says, reiterating the same description she has given me several times in the course of our drive. I again resist the urge to remind her that we are driving through rural Missouri. There are thousands of white farmhouses and hundreds of red barns. Then, as if she's seen it in a vision, we roll around a curve in the road, and there it is, a stately white farmhouse appearing nearly Gothic as we view it through the huge trees which closely guard it. 100 feet away stands a large red barn. Thank you.
Thank you, SK. Next up, we have our very own president, Michelle Bassett.
Hi, everyone. So this is the first chapter of my unpublished adult fantasy novel, Minstrel's Daughter. By the way, I am looking for an agent. Anyone who sees this on Zoom next month, just saying. Through the night-born shadows of her bedchamber, Loriana rushed, barefooted, to the adjoining nursery door. Carved images of frolicking children and whimsical forest creatures adorned the lacquered wood, laughing at her, mocking her, as threatening and surreal as the nightmare that had wrenched her fully awake. With trembling hands, she grasped the handle and tugged. The heavy door opened on ponderously silent hinges. Beyond, asleep in her crib, her little girl lay safe and undisturbed. Choking back a sob, Loriana slumped against the jamb. A nightmare, she tried to convince herself, just a nightmare. Only deep down, Loriana wasn't so sure. When was the last time she had dreamed so vividly, so truly? 3 years ago, the night before she learned she was to wed. She dreamt of Naren, a man she had never met, the man her father had chosen as her husband. She remembered clearly that night, aroused from slumber, her innocent body flushed with newly awakened passion, and her mind filled with all the lovely images of her betrothed-to-be. She had told no one about that dream, not her mother, nor her brother, not even her old tutor, Simbriel. Blinking away unshed tears, she looked now to their shared bed. Her husband, asleep in a wash of silvery moonlight, all fair skin and firm muscle amid silken sheets, as if he were a masterpiece carved of milkstone, polished by loving hands. The gentle rise and fall of his chest, the powerful beauty of him, even in repose, served as a reassurance of his love and protection. The distinctive sharpness of his Idevan features seemed less pronounced in slumber, almost human. Perhaps I should awaken him. She nibbled her lower lip, a childhood habit that still embarrassed her. The scent of their lovemaking lingering upon her skin calmed her skittering thoughts. Would he not simply tell her all was well, to put aside her fears and come back to bed? Smoothing sweat-dampened hair from her face, she pushed away from the door jamb and crossed the nursery to the polished mahogany crib, an heirloom that Naren himself had slept in as a babe, and gazed down at her daughter, Radriana, a precious gift of the goddess Pyamora, miraculously conceived in the first year of their marriage, a true blessing of the Bright One, unexpected, but not unwelcome. Reaching out, she touched a wisp of silken gold, gold like Naren, not dark as was her own, and smiled in the half-light of the falling moon. So lovely their ray, the melding of bloodlines having taken the best from each of them to rearrange into someone wholly unique. And not just hers and Naren's traits. In the shape of her daughter's mouth, her nose, Loriana saw her own mother whenever Radriana smiled. A sense of loss dulled by the passage of years tugged at Loriana's heart, the memory of her mother's lilting voice, her warmth and calm reassurance whenever a bad dream awakened her. Sweeping up after the day's events, dear heart, that's all. Dreams and nightmares are just the mind's way of ridding itself of the cobwebs. Oh, how Loriana had clung to her mother's insistence that nightmares were nothing more than the housekeeping of a restless mind. How desperately she had wanted to believe they meant nothing. But then another voice, ancient and unwanted, intruded into her thoughts. Simbriel, come to look in on her the night Radriana was born. So it begins. The dragon stirs. Guard well your children, Loriana. Oily portents and needle-sharp prophecies, dragons wielding magic and swords etched by time. The old man's archaic references still held the power to frighten her. In the years he served as her tutor, Simbriel never once scoffed at her fears nor offered platitudes when she shared the details of her dreams. He would listen to her every word, interrupting only to pose the occasional question, as if sorting through pebbles for a singularly precious gem. Guard well your children. She slid a hand across the flat of her abdomen, offering comfort to the fledgling life within, a life she alone knew existed, an improbable conception that would shock her husband's cadre of physicians if they knew. They had warned her not to expect motherhood to come early in her marriage, whispering amongst themselves that given the reproductive differences between humans and idevs and the expectation of her disparagingly short lifespan, she would likely never bear her lord an heir. Even Loriana had worried that her youth would fade and leave her barren long before she and Naren produced a child. So, when she missed her cycle that first month after exchanging vows, no one was more surprised than she. Overjoyed, she had told Naren immediately, and he in turn had told everyone else. Then she lost the baby. Even now, she was not sure which was the hardest to bear, hers and Naren's shared grief, or the silent pity of those who knew of their loss. When she failed to bleed only 2 months after that miscarriage, she kept the knowledge to herself until she could no longer hide the truth, telling anyone, even Naren, before her third missed cycle was a mistake she would never make again. When Naren noticed the subtle changes in her body, recognized them for what they were, he honored her wish to keep secret the pregnancy until certain their second child would survive to term. And so, on a year and 7 months ago, on a chill autumn morning, Radriana was born. Loriana leaned in and kissed her daughter's forehead, then smoothed the coverlet beneath her chin. The child stirred, little legs stretching, her toes touching the footboard of her crib, but she did not awaken. Soon, she would need a bed suitable for a toddler, and then Naren's crib would be ready for another. Leaving the nursery door ajar, Loriana slipped quietly back into her own bedchamber. A sliver of the moon shone through the highest row of window panes, illuminating what had been shrouded in darkness. Threatening shapes, indiscernible on the cusp of waking, chided her now with their silent, stoic familiarity. An antique arming stool, her mother's vanity, Naren's polished boots. A whiff of something unpleasant, like the sickly odor of wilted lilies, wrinkled her nose. The spring flower-filled vases adorning tabletops and pedestals throughout their private chambers must contain blooms known for their beauty, not their fragrance. In the morning, she would ask her maid to replace them with fresh ones, flowers with a more appealing bouquet. A chill slithered across her skin, raising goosebumps. A window left agape, perhaps, or some errant draft chasing down the soot-blackened flue. The sheer curtains framing her glass balcony doors stirred ever so slightly. She crossed the room and secured the door latch. Again. Her drowsy mind puzzled over the oddity. She was almost certain she had done that before going to bed. Stifling a yawn, she padded over to the massive four-poster, where Naren lay facing away, one arm awkwardly at his back, as if left behind during the act of rolling over. A shock of golden hair had fallen across his high-boned cheek, veiling beloved features. One would never know by looking at him that he was thrice her age. While she grew old, died, and withered to dust, his appearance would change little during their lifetime together. Her lifetime, she reminded herself. Naren would live on without her, the life expectancy of an Devon far greater than any human. Perhaps he would take another wife once she was gone, start another family. She tried not to think of that, of leaving him, of another woman taking her place. Instead, she clung to the unexpected happiness found in their arranged marriage, the love that had taken them both by surprise. Slipping under the covers, she tucked her cold toes beneath his legs to warm them, a husband's duty, she would tease when the touch of her chilled flesh awakened him. But he did not complain, did not even stir. She brushed a light kiss upon his shoulder and snuggled closer. The after effects of her nightmare had subsided, becoming a vague, distant impression, incapable of instilling any fear of actually coming true. How silly I am, she chided herself, no longer worried that someone would steal her child from her crib while she slept. As her breath shallowed and her waking mind sank into that deep, drowsy, liquid abyss, an intangible awareness insinuated, not the presence of something foreign, but the absence of something familiar. Through their pressed bodies, she felt the terrible stillness. Dark hesitation held her for a moment, then she pulled at her husband's shoulder. Naren? He slumped against her, head lolling to one side. Sightless eyes the color of twilight sky caught the moonlight. A dark slit gaped at his throat. That sickly, sweet odor intensified, not the stench of rotting lilies. Naren's Devon blood soaking into the thick mattress beneath the coverlet on his side of the bed. Horror choked all the air from her lungs. In a trembling tangle of sheets, she fought free of the deathbed and stumbled to her feet. One fleeing step was as far as she got. Unseen arms ensnared her, the hard, wiry arms of a cloaked and hooded figure from the shadows, from some hidden place within the folds of brocade that hung behind the headpost of her marriage bed. Struggling against the assailant, she gasped air to cry out. A gloved hand clamped shut her mouth. She could not scream, could not draw breath. The sudden kiss of a curved blade drawn just once across her throat came without pain. A tingle, nothing more. Blood drenched the front of her nightgown, spreading over the swell of her breasts, her stomach, splattering the immaculate wood floor. Shock rooted her, her mind unable to comprehend as thoughts spun like silk kites caught in a maelstrom, wrenched free of their strings and frayed by the howling wind. Her body convulsed, legs weakened, buckled. In what seemed an almost graceful gesture of withdrawal, the assassin released her. She toppled onto the bed beside her beloved to stare into the cloudy twilight of his fixed eyes. If only, a whispered thought as faint as a wind chime, if only lifeblood could mingle, then everything would be all right. Above, framed within the distorted glass pane of a skylight window, the wavering sliver of the moon frowned down at her. Or perhaps her vision wavered, distorting the image, a shimmering crescent seen through tears. Beneath the luminous glow of that waning moon, through the blur of her failing sight, she caught a glimpse of the human face beneath the cowl, a stranger's face. his merciless dark eyes cold and unemotional. He headed toward the nursery. Guard well your children. In that frozen moment of her last breath untaken, of the failing beat of a heart too weak to sustain life, Loriana finally understood and could do nothing to stop her nightmare from coming true. Ray, the cry that began in her soul lodged stillborn in her throat.
Thank you, Michelle. Next up, we have Greg Porterfield.
Well, I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit here. What I'm going to read is like chapter 21 in my book that I wrote back in 2014, Long Shadows. It's a historic tale, involves a lot of fascinating, totally fascinating things that took place from just after the Civil War until almost present time. This piece starts 1915, April 28th. As Robert Burton steps down from his train, he's hit by a powerful wave of sound and people. New York has changed. On his last visit to New York City, it reminded him of the slums of London with squat tenements housing a multitude of poorly dressed immigrants. As his porter briskly pushes the luggage cart through the station, a vast cathedral towers above the endless marble floor. But the structure is not a church. It's the newly constructed Penn Station, a monument to the gods of the industrial age. Colossal columns enhance the four entrances to a magnificent hall with an elegant ceiling 150 feet above. Its span rivals any of the ancient cathedrals of Europe. The waiting room, faced in granite and marble beneath the man-made sky, stretches for nearly 300 feet. A large clock, flanked by pink marble statues, perches atop each of the four entryways, reminding Burton of the great architecture of Italy. Rushing behind the porter, Burton follows his luggage to the 8th Avenue exit and descends the steps of Penn Station. Turning, Burton can see a colonnade behind him stretching across the face of the building as if he's descending from Mount Olympus through a magnificent gateway into the future of America. Yellow taxis line the curb at Penn Station, ready to receive their many passengers. Like hummingbirds, they prepare to dart into traffic. "Where to, mister?" the cabbie asks. "Take me to the plaza." After loading Burton's small traveling trunk and suitcase, the driver, an Irish immigrant bristling with red hair and ruddy complexion, slams the taxi into gear and lurches onto the roadway as crowds of carts, people, and horses scurry to get out of the way. Elbowing through traffic, they head up 8th Avenue toward the park. This is not Burton's first time in an automobile. He had seen a few in Maple Grove and even rode in one in San Francisco, but this is his first experience giving his life over to a New York cabbie. The sound of the city's deafening. Mobs of people pulse from sidewalk to street and burst into traffic from between cars. Vendors hawk food and clothing, trinkets of all shapes and sizes, odors of cooking meats, sweet and filth fill the air. Even the cool of April can't calm the assault. This is city. "You're here. 50 cents. I'll get your luggage," croaks the cabbie. The doorman at the plaza catches Burton's eye and smiles at the recent arrival. Burton extracts himself from the taxi as the driver loads the luggage onto a waiting cart that's pushed by a young man in a neat red uniform. It identifies him as the lowest rank of the hotel. "First time in New York City?" the young man, barely out of his short pants, asks. "What? No, but it's been a while. Over 30 years. Seems like things have changed a little." 30 years? Yes, sir. Everything's different. Everything. Burton follows as the bellhop moves through the crush of people on the sidewalk into the calm of the hotel. The interior is a work of art. with the best of the city's social class lounging about and moving with a rhythm reserved for those living on other people's money. He's out of his element. After settling into his room on the 12th floor, with a tree-filled view of Central Park, the Grand Army Plaza, and Fifth Avenue, Burton wipes the travel from his face, changes clothes, and heads downstairs to the lobby. The concierge directs him to the men's bar. It's been a long trip and he needs a drink. New York's elite parade like prize ponies through the broad hallways of the hotel. Its walkways are peopled by an elegant, well-dressed crowd, attired in silk and satin, the finest suits, dresses, and hats. Mirrors reflect their images as they pass ferns, marbled archways, and crystal chandeliers. The frosted glass of the Western Union office door catches his eye, and Burton decides to send a message. An older man in an ill-fitting suit and starched collar stands behind the counter. His bushy eyebrows, slightly graying temples, and a handlebar mustache complement his thin white hands, one finger calloused to the sending key. They shake ever so slightly as if already typing out a message he's not yet received. "I'd like to send a telegram." "Came to the right place," the telegraph officer responds with a joke that never grows old. "Write it down. Print so I can read it. You can write, can't you?" "Here you go, old-timer," Burton says, smiling as he slips the paper across the counter. "Maple Grove, California. You're a long way from home." "Actually, home's where I'm headed." Burton's eyes missed with the comment. "That'll be 2 bits, mister." The Western Union telegraph that's sent was received in Maple Grove, California. It was addressed to Horace Braddock. The telegraph reads, "Arrived New York City. Sail the Lusitania, May 1st. My best to you all, RB." As we all know, that was the beginning of the First World War when the ship was sunk.
Thank you so much, Greg. Next up, we have Tad Bogdan.
Good morning and greetings from San Francisco. I wish I could be there with you in person. It's always more fun for all of us if we're together in the same room. But I'm going to be doing a reading from my book, a fairly short reading, less than 5 minutes. So I'll spend 1 or 2 minutes to give you a little context. The title of the book, if you can see it, is How to Master the Universe, Personal and Professional Life Skills. It's built around a principle that you are the center of the universe. That's the center of your universe. And every other entity is the center of their own universe too, and they're motivated by their own survival and success. And this is true of everyone in the room, people that you interact with. It's true of plants, animals, and even organizations and entities, governments, religions, and the Diamond Valley Writers Guild. Everybody is trying to survive and thrive. And the book covers 61 different topics around this. And some of them are the personal skills for surviving and thriving, things like thinking skills, problem solving, even a breathing technique that helps increase your oxygen absorption efficiency by 70%. But also this realization that the other people that you're dealing with in entities are also the center of their own universes helps you become successful in working and interacting with other people. So the book includes interpersonal skills such as public speaking. There's a 4-step process for establishing instant rapport. And it also contains professional skills such as leadership and negotiations. So I'm going to pick 2 topics from the book and read some excerpts from the section on mistakes and on success. Mistakes. Ground Control had a target programmed into Robbie the rocket before he launched. When Robbie was early in flight, he checked with the ground control to see if he was still on target. Ground Control signaled back that he was a few degrees off to the north and east. Robbie adjusted his direction and checked back a little bit later to learn that he needed to make another adjustment. This process continued throughout the flight, and in the end, Robbie hit his target. Did Robbie make mistakes? Sure, but he constantly adjusted to small, correctable mistakes rather than wait to analyze his progress until he was too far off course to reach his target. In 2021, Fortune magazine ranked Amazon as the second largest and second most admired company in America. Amazon's leader, Jeff Bezos, has often been ranked the richest man in the world. Do Jeff Bezos and Amazon make mistakes? They make a lot of mistakes. Amazon's history is littered with failed projects, including the Fire Phone, a travel site called Destinations, Amazon Wallet, a mobile card processing site called Amazon Local Register, music importer for downloading songs, Test Drive, Amazon WebPay, Endless.com for high-end clothes, and Askville. Making mistakes does not make you a failure, but failing to learn from your mistakes will. It's a quote from Paul Bear Bryant, one of the most winning coaches in American college football. When you make a mistake, there are only 3 things you should ever do about it. Admit it, learn from it, and do not repeat it. When you do make a mistake, try to fail fast and move on as quickly as possible. Admit your mistakes to yourself and to others when appropriate. We all make mistakes as part of our learning process, and other people will admire you all the more if you're mature enough to admit when you have been wrong. Another quote, this is from Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general. If you keep doing what you've always done, you keep on getting what you've always got. So moving on to some excerpts from Success. If you think you're smart, why aren't you rich? That's an old proverb. Being rich depends on the definition you choose for the words rich and wealth. It also depends on how you decide to measure success. Success in your business or career should be a subset of your overall success in life. You cannot take monetary success with you when you die, but you can leave a legacy of wealth and good deeds for others. In business and careers, success is often measured in financial terms. Money and wealth are also used as success metrics for the value provided to customers, investors, partners, and employees. Many non-monetary accomplishments can be more important than your monetary measures of success. Success can also be measured by an abundance or profusion of anything, such as producing results that improve lives, create new opportunities, save the environment, increase safety, create goodwill, and improve the world in general. One currency of success is the accumulation of karma credit by you or your business. Appropriate monetary or non-monetary contributions can be considered investments in a karma pool. Unlike money, karma credits are general, fluid, and intangible assets, which are difficult to measure. This is one of the reasons for using the term pool instead of calling it an exchange. Success in business or life in general is rated on a different scale than it is in school. In school, you typically rate it on a scale from 0 to 100. In life, you can produce negative results or excel past 100%. In business, you can drop below 0 return on a business transaction and lose money, your money and other people's money. Or you can make a healthy profit beyond 100%. In life, you can make an unlimited number of positive contributions to the world. So getting back to the theme of mastering the universe is a journey and not a destination. Destinations are endpoints, and endpoints have no future. So my overriding message of the book is enjoy those destinations while you're there, appreciate them, celebrate them, and then move on and enjoy the journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tad, and thank you for taking out the time of your day to join us today. Appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
Next up is our member at large, Lynette Tucker.
Thank you, Jessica. I am going to be reading from my short story entitled Holes. The old Chevy's tailgate was full of dents and holes. Half of Chevrolet was obliterated and unreadable. I wondered what kind of attachment could possibly possess a person to keep a wrecked tailgate on an otherwise perfectly restored vehicle. As I watched, Mike parked the truck on the curb and slowly climbed out of the driver's side of the cab. He was wearing a bright Hawaiian shirt and shorts. A bit underdressed for this weather, I thought, but it didn't seem to bother him. I tugged my cardigan tighter and watched his progress. On a camel-colored prosthetic leg, he limped around the front of the vehicle and stopped at the passenger side to let out a large German Shepherd named Ranger. What I needed was a breakout story so I could stop job hopping. I talked to many people about a variety of things, and Mike was the current subject of my community news submission. I'd grown tired of freelancing and hoped this was the lead that would land me a permanent job at the local paper. Mike and Ranger are disabled vets. We met at the small coffee shop, grabbing a couple of hot drinks and sitting down at an outdoor table for the interview. As we sat in the sunshine, Ranger laid against Mike's leg. He stroked the dog's ear as he casually talked about his companion. Ranger had a wicked scar on his face, and his right eye was sewn shut. Mike wasn't in great shape either. His face was disfigured, but he had a charming smile. I was instantly drawn to his warmth and wondered if he had a girlfriend. I wish I'd touched up my lipstick as I caught a glance at my reflection in the shop window. I had my tape recorder sitting on the table between us, ready to capture Mike's story. In a small moment of panic, I dumped out my bag, looking for my yellow tablet and pen, just in case the tape recorder refused to work again. Finally ready, I raised my head. Our eyes met. I swallowed hard and tried to keep it professional. So, why do you call your program Holes? He looked away briefly and chuckled. Then he leaned in close. Because holes have saved my life. I didn't really understand, but hesitated to stop him. I put my hand out to Ranger, and he sat up and licked it. A small smile crossed Mike's face. Well, you just passed muster. I trust that dog's judgment more than most people I know. He sat back in his chair. For the next 30 minutes, he shared his story. When our caravan was attacked, several of our guys were killed instantly. Not me. They just chopped off my gnarled leg and sent me home. 6 months rehab. Mike shook his head. No, that's not true. 3 months lying in a hospital bed feeling sorry for myself. Total non-cooperation with the med staff. Then I met Jackson and the real rehab began. At the sound of the word Jackson, Ranger raised his head and looked around. Jackson? I asked. Yeah, the guy lost both his legs, but he told it to me straight. I didn't know it at the time, but Jackson told it to a lot of guys straight. Said where there's life, there's hope. Get back to living. No BS. How do you argue with a double amputee? Ranger moved over and laid under the table between us. Jackson taught me to look for the opportunities instead of the impossibilities. Through his encouragement, I began to make plans for the future. Mike looked down at Ranger and then back at me. I re-enlisted in life. So that all happened when you were back east? Yeah, but you know, me and Jackson stayed in touch after I moved to SoCal. He said, keep fighting the good fight. That's when I started my own outreach to vets. Bring a little hope to this coast. I teach vets how to rebuild cars and other useful mechanical skills. Wait, you rebuild cars? I nodded toward the truck. What's up with the tailgate full of holes? Because even though it has holes in it, it's still useful. It still has a job to do. That truck was the first rebuild I did when they released me from the hospital. Jackson and I did it together. We took something damaged and we gave it purpose. He must be an amazing friend, someone you can count on. Do you think he'd talk to me if I gave him a call? Mike grew quiet. I didn't push him, let him answer in his own time. He shifted in his seat, reached down and repeatedly stroked Ranger's head. On a bad day, Jackson took his life. He left Ranger and a note. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I'm so sorry, was all I could say. Mike wasn't the only one at the table to lose a friend that way. For a long time, I felt I let him down. If I had been there, it wouldn't have happened. He'd still be here, making a difference to so many people. I still struggle sometimes. It's taken a lot of counseling for me to see that it wasn't my fault just because I was his friend. Ranger raised his head, whined, and then settled down again. I think he knew the mood of the conversation had changed. We sat for a number of minutes in silence, sipping our coffees. See, but that's why Holes is more important to me than ever, and why I agreed to do this interview. If you can tell others, maybe they'll get involved and we can save a few of them, turn them back from the edge. I get it. I can't wait to tell your story. I looked down and sighed, forgotten to turn on the tape recorder. The yellow pad was blank, but it didn't matter. Mike and Jackson's stories were burned into my mind. I wanted to help in any way I could. Mike's philosophy of life, that even damaged people were worth saving, rehabilitating, each life still useful and purposeful. How could you offer someone anything more precious than hope? It was a story worth writing and sharing with all who would listen, and I intended to spread the news. So that day, I found more than just a news item. I found a purpose for my life. I now work at Holes with Mike and Ranger, spreading the word. I use my contacts and skills to advertise their mission, to get the word out. For Mike, for Jackson, for my friend who left too soon. If a bullet-ridden, dented tailgate can still have worth, how much more valuable is a human being? Because really, aren't we all a bit damaged? We all have a few holes. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you've had thoughts of suicide or know someone that has, just encourage them to take another breath. The suicide prevention hotline is simple now. You can call or text 988. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lynette. It's a beautiful story and a beautiful message to always remember. And to alleviate some of the negative emotions, perhaps, Lynette promised in her submission email that she wouldn't cry this time. So thank God she didn't, but I think she got everyone else to cry. So thank you, Lynette, for that. Next up, we have Glenn Willis.
I gotta say, as a vet, it's made me weepy. I was lucky enough to be in Germany in the 70s. I didn't shoot at anybody. Nobody shot at me. At any rate, about 20 years ago, I started a collection of short stories that I was writing. I called the book Wishful Thinking. And it's still wishful thinking. This is probably the most recent piece I did a while back, and it's not finished, but it has to do with memories can exceed reality. If I can read it. Your story was really good, thank you. So this is the adventures of Uncle Frank. All right, children, show is over. Off to bed with you. Oh, Aunt Junie, do we have to? Just 2 more minutes. Mom and Dad aren't here. Please. Yes, you must. There's school tomorrow. Now, brush your teeth, pick your clothes off the floor, hang that towel, flush that potty. And then softly she asks, did you, darling? Did you brush your teeth? Darling wraps her arms around and pulls her face into Aunt Junie's left leg. A barely perceptible wobble of her head, side to side, says no. Okay, come along. Show Annie which toothbrush is yours. Through the tune of water splashing in the lav, the pleas start. Andy, Aunt Junie, please tell us the story. Aunt Junie smiles. What story would that be? Aunt Junie, you know. We want to hear about Uncle Frank. Again? But I told you that story the last time I sat you. Oh, please, please, please. Aunt Junie smiled again, both in and out, for she truly loved Uncle Frank, too. All right, children, you 2 little ones, snug up in the bed. You 3 can move to your rooms after they've gone. Snugged in or sitting on pillows, they waited as Aunt Junie gathered thoughts and breath. So long ago, I was a newlywed, and Uncle Sam announced the first rocket to Mars was built. He started a search around the nation to find the best man in America who could drive such a vehicle for 300 million miles and back. Uncle Frank, my own Frank, was chosen to be captain. He was the strongest, smartest, best-looking man ever. He ran and he read and he trained for a year, and then he kissed me, the most wonderful kiss, better than Sleeping Beauty ever got, and said goodbye. I watched on the TV while they strapped him into his rocket chair. I watched as he waited, as the numbers counted down. I apologize, I've got the wrong glasses. I watched on the TV as they strapped him into his rocket chair. I watched as he waited, as the numbers counted down. Everybody held up their fingers, reducing them one by one as they chanted. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off, and Uncle Frank pushed the button. The rockets roared louder than thunder. The fire sprayed for miles in all directions. Hoses and wires fell away and the rocket leaped into the air. Uncle Frank steered straight up. The rockets pushed so hard he couldn't even push telephone buttons to tell me he was okay. The rockets roared all the way to outer space. A few of the crew started to get scared, but Uncle Frank just told them to have no fear, and they knew they were safe. That's Uncle Frank. I want to be like Uncle Frank when I grow up. Shh. Moon was looking closer and bigger in the window. Suddenly the co-pilot yelled, "Captain, there's a meteor headed our way." Frank's fingers flashed over the computer keyboard, and he made quick calculations. Then he smacked a couple of buttons, flicked 3 switches, and the crew felt the rocket move sideways. Then there was a clang. The co-pilot again reported, "Captain, you've saved us. But the fin on the rear of the ship got clipped and is bent. What will we do?" The other men were moaning, "Oh no, what'll we do?" Uncle Frank checked a couple of things on the computer, shut off the rockets, and told the floating men, "Don't worry, I got this." Then he went in the airlock, put on a suit and grabbed a hammer, went down the side of the ship with his magnetic boots. He had a rope tied to the door handle and his belt in case he fell off the ship. He banged that shin back to shape in short order, then put himself back up in the rope, and again they were off toward Mars. They rocketed along toward Mars for months. Frank calmed tempers when the men complained of close quarters. He rationed food, made sure the ship was kept running and clean. If anything broke, he showed the men how to fix it with pliers and baling wire. Finally, Mars came into view. Frank turned the ship around and put the rockets toward Mars to slow down. They landed on a field on a plumed fire that roared like thunder again. My Frank said, "Let's wait for things to cool off a bit, and then I'll go out and see what's out there." The other men started up a clamor, "But I want to be first. No, I should be first because I'm the oldest. Perhaps I should be first because I'm the cameraman." Uncle Frank said, "As captain, I shall be first. You will all have a chance. Draw straws." So they all drew straws and set up a schedule. Then they tested the air and the gravity and several other things. Then Uncle Frank suited up. "Oh, Aunt Judy, did he go out of the ship? Did he find Martians? You children know, I think, that Mars is a smaller planet than Earth. That means there's less gravity than on Earth." He went to the door, looked down the ladder, and jumped out and down to Mars. He jumped and jumped. He could have jumped over a house if there'd been one. When he was tired, he finally called Earth and made a report. "Captain Frank and crew here. We have arrived and conditions are largely as expected. Gravity is less than we are used to. We will test the atmosphere next. Over and out." It's unfinished. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenn, for that. All right, next up we have Brenda Hill, who is over Zoom, but unfortunately she's not feeling well today, so I have been requested to read her piece for her. Brenda, I don't know if you wanted to say a couple words about it before I begin, or... You're muted, Brenda.
Thanks, Jessica, but I'm very hoarse, very difficult to talk. But it is a dark fantasy. So I'll just let you continue, and thank you so much for reading for me. I so appreciate it.
Of course. Now, this is entitled From the Painted Tomb. It is chapter 1 of her dark fantasy. The first howl pierced the night and echoed through the deserted state park. Birds took to flight. Frogs and crickets went silent. Krista Hawthorne stiffened on the bench overlooking Loon River. What was that? She scanned the frost-covered grounds around her and peered through the heavily wooded Appalachian forest. What was out there? Beside her, Todd Mitchell chuckled. "Coyotes, they won't hurt you. They're just as afraid of us as we are of them." He didn't seem alarmed, so maybe it was just a coyote, although that howl was unlike anything she'd ever heard, deeper, stronger, and aggressive, as if from a maddened animal. Krista listened intently for another sound, but water splashing over river boulders was all she could hear in the black night. She tried to relax and enjoy the rest of the October evening, her first night out since her transfer. But something felt wrong. The forest creatures were too quiet. "There, now take a look." Todd directed her attention back to the water. Over the far bank, the rising full moon cleared the trees and cast an iridescent reflection on the river, its silver streaks rippling with the current. "Oh, how beautiful, just like you said." After growing up with sagebrush and cactus in the Sonoran Desert region of Arizona, Krista loved the lush forest and rivers in the West Virginia mountains. But in the months since her move, she had been too busy going into her job and apartment to see much of her new state, or to socialize, and she had been so lonely. Still, when Todd, the newspaper's senior reporter, suggested an evening out, she hesitated. She had no interest in another relationship, not this soon, maybe never again. But after another weekend alone in her small apartment, she'd caved, agreeing to only go if they went as friends and she paid her own way. "You'll have to see what this town is famous for," Todd had said over dinner. "When the full moon rises over the river, it's a beautiful sight, one you shouldn't miss. It's a town requirement, you know, for all new residents." He grinned, looking so nice with his blonde hair freshly trimmed and a pullover covering his large frame that she smiled in return. "And I promise," he added, "you won't forget it." She should have realized that with the park closed, there would be no facilities and no lighting. While the scent of pine from the surrounding forest lingered in the air, she could distinguish only vague outlines of trees and brush. She wouldn't be able to see if anything were creeping up on them. A cold breeze blew off the water and ruffled her penny-colored curls. She caught a slight fishy scent along with hint of musk. Canine? Were wolves in the area? Ice prickled her spine and she shivered, suddenly reminded that they were the only people in the park. Todd moved closer, and for a moment she felt grateful for the warmth. The moon hovered over the river, its radiance bright against the indigo sky. Cast in its brilliance, the trees and bushes took shape. Krista should have felt relieved, but something was off, unnatural. Why were the frogs still silent? She scanned the woods around her and peered into the brush. Nothing moved, but her heart raced with primal urge to run. She took a deep, calming breath. She didn't want Todd to think she was easily frightened. As the lead reporter, he could recommend fluff pieces instead of actual news, and she wanted to write things important to her new community, things of which she could be proud. And she desperately needed a reason for pride. Her ego had been so severely wounded, she didn't know if she'd ever recover. A soft rustle sounded a few feet beyond the pines. Without moving, barely breathing, she whispered, "Something's out there." Todd glanced up. Just an owl taking flight. "Shh, don't talk so loud. Something might hear you." "There's nothing out here except that owl," he laughed and pointed to the bird fleeing the area, its wings brushing stark tree limbs. "See? That's what you're hearing. Don't worry, I'm big and strong. I'll protect you." He tried to draw her into his arms, but she pulled away. So far, he'd respected her wishes to spend the evening as friends, but now she wondered. He'd been a gentleman, and she had enjoyed the evening, until the howl and the uneasy feeling something was out there watching them. "Let's leave," she kept her voice to a whisper. "Relax, the evening's young. We should get to know each other." He slipped an arm around her shoulder and dropped his hand to her right breast. All of her senses, already on alert, went into overdrive. Before she could react, he pulled her toward him and plunged his other hand under her jacket. She wrestled free and sprang from the bench. "I told you I wasn't interested in anything more than friendship." "Aw, come on." Smiling, he tried to pull her back down. "Why do you think I brought you out here? With all that red hair, there has to be a fire underneath that ice, and I'm the man to ignite it. I'm leaving." She spun around and headed for his truck. He jumped to his feet and trailed after her. "Hey, what's the harm? I just wanted to get friendly." "Your idea of friendly isn't the same as mine." She knew nothing about him, only that he had been courteous at the office, taking time to show her around and make her sure she knew the routine. He caught her, grabbed her by the arm, and pulled her to a stop. "What's the big deal? You're not some shy virgin." That stung. At 32, with only her former fiancé as a lover, she felt like one. She yanked her arm free. What was she thinking, agreeing to go out with him? Weren't the wounds she carried from the last time she trusted raw enough? Never again, she swore, heading for his red Tacoma. Once home, she'd make some hot tea and try to forget this evening. No more dates, no matter how lonely she felt. No more failed expectations. She'd live for her new job with no romantic attachments and no traumas. "Look, we obviously expected different things from tonight. So this isn't going to work. Please just take me home and we'll forget this ever happened." She strode through scattered leaves encrusted with ice. His truck stood about 10 feet ahead, and while she didn't want to ride back with him, the state park was miles from their small mountain town. He tromped past her, turning and blocked her way. He stood too close, his bulk outweighing her petite frame by 100 pounds. She took a step back. Todd? Was he drunk? But no, they'd each only had one mixed drink at dinner and then coffee afterward. Drugs? That would account for his ruddy complexion, but she wouldn't have noticed it if he'd been high. Eyes narrowed, he stepped closer. "Just stay where you are." She backed up another step and kept her voice firm, as if she were speaking to a hostile animal. It broke in a tremor. How could this be happening? Keeping an eye on him, she checked the grounds for a stick, a rock, anything she could use as a weapon. "You think I'm going to force you or something? Don't worry, sis. I've never had to strong harm any woman. But I put out for a nice meal, and I think you'd be willing to put out too. I tried to pay for my dinner, but you..." Dead vegetation crunched behind Krista as someone or something trampled through the leaves. She whirled around and scanned the underbrush, 100 wild thoughts racing through her mind. Who or what was moving out there? Todd peered into the brush. What the hell? Shh. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped around him and eased toward his truck. If they kept quiet, maybe whatever it was would go away. It had to be insane to visit a deserted campground this time of year, especially one in a state park that bordered the national forest. Wild animals could easily invade the site since it had to be closed for the season. A deep rumbling growl, soft and menacing, sounded from the foliage. Every nerve in Krista's body reacted. Her frantic gaze met Todd's, and they ran for his pickup. Behind them, a twig snapped, and then another. Deep thuds pounded toward them. Todd reached the truck just ahead of Krista. He jumped in and started the engine. Krista grappled for the passenger door handle. Locked. She pounded on the door. "Let me in!" Looking wildly behind her, she expected to see a bear or a pack of wolves breaking from the trees. You wanted to be Miss Independence, now's your chance. Todd flipped her the finger and then gunned the engine. His truck shot down the blacktop road. Todd! She ran after him, but his truck didn't slow. Stunned, she stared incredulously at the red taillights receding in the night. God, he'd left her, actually left her alone. She whipped around, scanning the area for a bush large enough to hide behind, or a tree with heavy branches. A second howl ripped through the night, wide open, a lingering, inhuman wail that reverberated through her mouth, her eyes, her skull, penetrating every sense with terror. What in God's name was it? She never heard such a sound, not even in movies. Her heart pounded in her throat. She dashed across the road and ducked behind a thick oak. Did it see her? Afraid to look, terrified as if she rose and peered around the tree, she'd come face to face with some ungodly creature. She stayed hidden, and still as death. Thumping noises from something massive pounded away from her. Krista didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until she gasped for air. Did that creature know she'd hidden? Would it come back to look for her? She had to get out of here, had to let the authorities know something dangerous was loose in the forest, something terrifying. She reached for her handbag and her phone and went cold. Her phone wasn't in her handbag, and her bag was in Todd's truck. What was she going to do? She had nothing, no car, no credit cards, no cash, no phone to call for help. Would she make it through the night?
Thank you, Jessica. I so appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, next up is Leticia Garcia Bradford. Leticia, you haven't unmuted yet.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you for this particular day of prose reading. My name is Leticia Garcia Bradford, and I think you're the best writing group up and down California. So thank you for doing this. My short story is inspired by a true story by my best friend, Lori Motier, and it's dedicated to my granddaughter, Francesca, who can read the story now. And it's kind of exciting. So here goes. The girl who caused the New York City blackout. In Brooklyn, New York City, 1965, Dad wanted a color TV. Lottie's family had had a black and white before anyone else in the building. The picture was often schizo, with jagged lines and vibrating across the screen. Picture clarity was dependent on bunny ear antennas and a host of dials for the 9 channels on the airwaves. Lottie loved television. After school, she ran home to watch her favorite dance show. Of all, she especially loved Darnell on Teen Dance New York. When the new color television was installed, Dad set all the dials so the picture was clear. It was most of the time. Even on good days, the screen would go fuzzy. Dad, the TV's schizo again. Don't touch anything. Hurry, Teen Dance New York is on. Quit your kvetching, I'm coming. Dad left his newspaper next to his daily iced tea, which he drank to combat the constant heat and humidity in the flat during the summer. After he came home from work as a glass blower, also a hot and humid environment, iced tea cooled him off. Coming, my precious princess, the news is going to be on. Your dancing show is almost over anyway. But Dad, the TiVo is schizo again. The dance-off is next. Hurry. One balmy afternoon, Dad is working late. Dance party is on. Lottie has to watch her show. As she turns the TV on, she prays that the picture is passable. Don't touch the dials, Lottie repeated. Lee chanted to herself. Of course, the screen is off kilter. Ugh, Darnell's dancing today. Without thinking or hesitation, Lottie starts turning out every which way. Initially, it went dark, then fuzzy, and it went dark with the blink of light like a flashbulb. No, that is going to tan my hide. Frantically, she moves all the dials. Nothing. She notices the ceiling light is out. Like eyes getting used to the dark, she is aware now there is no humming, throttling sound of the barely functional air conditioner set in the window. Panicking, she runs over to check the unit and notices the traffic lights are out. Honking escalates, screeching of brakes. Where's the light? Wait, no light. People were opening their windows, shouts abounded. Lottie slowly realizing there was no electricity anywhere. I did it. I caused it. I should have never touched the dials. Dad is going to never let me watch TV again. Quickly, the flat gets stifling. Lottie feels warm and stuffy and full of fear. If I hadn't touched the dials, if I hadn't wanted to watch Darnell on Dance Party, I'm never watching it again. With electricity, there's no TV and no light nor cooler. Hot, it is hot. On the kitchen wall, the battery-operated clock is ticking. Time passes. Mom would be home soon. 1 hour, 2 hours. Now it's getting dark. Alone in the apartment, her terror grows. Not only did I cause this, but Mom can't get home. It's my fault again. Mom worked at Stewart's Cleaners 43 blocks away. Trains wouldn't be running. She would have to walk. Oh no, no elevator. Lottie runs out the front door to check the elevator. No red light on the call button. Mom will be hopping mad after she climbs 13 floors up. Dad is going to disown me. I will have to confess I touched the dials. Will she protect me from Dad? How can she? Everyone will know I touched the dials. Everyone will know it's my fault. Shame, shame, shame. What do? I can't run away. It's too hot. The whole city must be hot. As it gets darker, Lottie is at the window again. No street lamps. Windows are dark. Traffic is backed up. More and more honking. People are crowding the streets trying to make their way home. An eeriness ensues. Lottie sits on the couch to contemplate the turmoil she has caused. Dozing in the dark alone, she hears her mother arrive. Mom, it's my fault. There is no electricity. It's a blackout, dear. The entire city has no electricity. It is not your fault. A blackout? Without thinking, Lottie blurts out, I touched the dials on the TV and everything went dark. I caused the blackout. Mother consoles again. No, dear, it's not your fault. Sobbing and realizing what she has confessed, no, I caused it. It's because of me there is no electricity. Mother, trying to distract Lottie. How about a glass of water? It will make you feel better. No, it won't. Dad is going to hate me. Where is he? I am sure he's on his way. He'll be okay. It is not okay. Did you eat? Here, drink your water first. Barely sipping the water, Lottie hears the front door. Sobbing and rushing to the door. Father, sorry, I'm so sorry. What, my princess? I caused the blackout. I touched the dials and everything went dark. Really now, what makes you think it's because of you? I was bad. It's my fault. Princess darling, the power plant ran out of electricity. Everyone is talking about it. The lights will return. You'll be able to watch TV again. Finally calming down. Really? You'll let me watch after what I have done? Yes, my princess. Oh, Father, I love you. You're the best father anywhere, as Lottie gives her dad a suffocating hug. It's hot. Where's my iced tea? Let me see if the ice has not yet melted. I'm hot too. Going to the freezer, they found ice and soft ice cream. So they had ice cream for dinner. Lottie's favorite. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Letitia. Next up is Suzanne Saunders.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Is my audio on? Anybody put a thumbs up? Oh, thank you, Kevin, thank you.
Yes.
Sometimes I don't trust my audio. Sometimes when I'm on Zoom, it won't, let me talk. But anyway, okay, so my story is a middle grade story. It's a short story, and it is a fairy tale. So since it's for middle graders, younger readers, I am gonna read it with a little bit of voice inflection with the characters. So just tap into your, middle grade self as I read it. Okay. All right. And it is called A Halloween Fairy Tale. So it's appropriate for the time of year. All right. So a few days before Halloween, in a small village, lived a young woman named Clarissa. One morning, she awoke to a knock on her door. Surprised by the unexpected visitor, she jumped out of bed, wrapped her robe around her, and headed to the door. When she opened it, no one was there, but a single red rose on her porch with a note attached to it. She read the note. Dear beautiful Clarissa, here is a rose to show my admiration of you. Fondly, your secret admirer. She had no idea who left the note. The next day, the same thing happened, but instead of a rose, a box with chocolate was left on her step. The note read, Dear sweet Clarissa, here is a chocolate to match the sweetness of your personality. Fondly, your secret admirer. The next day, she received a seashell on her step that glowed like a pearl. This time, the note read, Dear Clarissa, you are the pearl in my heart. When you sleep tonight, place the seashell next to your ear and listen to our song. Fondly, your secret admirer. That night, the night of Halloween, after she passed cookies out to trick-or-treaters, she went to bed. She placed the seashell next to her ear. As she waited to hear the song, she fell asleep. In the middle of the night, the seashell began to sing. Follow me across the land to a place where we can walk hand in hand. Intrigued, she followed the song, which led her to an old abandoned estate home with a Gothic gate. She tried the gate, but it was locked. Discouraged, she decided to leave. As she took her first step, a voice said in her name, Clarissa. She jumped. Who's that? A pumpkin on the ground moved, bumping her foot. She looked down at the pumpkin. The pumpkin was a carved jack-o'-lantern, rolled up and looked at Clarissa with its carved eyes. Hello, he said. It's me, your secret admirer. He grinned his crescent moon smile. You've got to be kidding. It's not possible. Why not? He asked. Because you're a pumpkin. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. I may look like a pumpkin, but I'm not. I'm the one who left the gifts. How could you leave me gifts and write notes? I had some help, he grinned. My secret admirer is a pumpkin? Disappointed, she put her hands on her hips. He rolled himself up to a higher spot of ground, looking at her with sad eyes. I was once a dashing young man. I was so handsome that whenever I walked by, women fainted, but my good fortune turned bad when an evil witch cursed me and turned me into a pumpkin. But I'm not a pumpkin. I just look like one right now. Sorry that you had this misfortune, Mr. Pumpkin, but what does that have to do with me? My situation has everything to do with you, and my name is Jacques. Okay, Jacques, what does this all have to do with me? Because once you get to know me, you'll fall in love with me, which will break the spell, he smiled. I won't fall in love with you because you're a pumpkin. Oh, but you will. I won't. Isn't there any other way to turn you back into a person? No, you must fall in love with me. Clarissa paced as she thought of other options. Then she came up with an idea. I will take you to the evil witch that turned you into a pumpkin and ask her to remove the spell. You would do that for me? That must mean you like me, he smiled. No, I don't know you well enough to like you. My heart is broken, he swooned. Clarissa laughed. You're a pumpkin, you don't have a heart. But I do, and it's yours if you want it. Well, I don't, she declared. Hey, whose creepy old mansion is this? Mine, and it's not creepy. It's just that I can't keep it maintained while I'm a pumpkin. Yeah, right. Anyway, let's get on our way to the witch, instructed Clarissa. Right now, but it's midnight. You brought me out here, so we're going to fix this problem. So I'm a problem? He pouted. Clarissa looked at Jacques and furrowed her eyebrows. You're looking at me. Do you find me attractive? He asked. No, I'm trying to figure out how I get you to the witch because you don't have legs. Oh, I usually roll on my side to get around. How about I put you in that old wheelbarrow over there and I wheel you to the witch, she suggested. That is a great idea. He tried his best to hop into the wheelbarrow, but his attempts failed. Here, let me help you, said Clarissa. She picked him up and placed him in it. There, now we can get moving. She gripped the handles, lifted them, and then began their journey to the witch's cottage. When they entered the village where the evil witch lived, Jacques directed her to a crooked cottage. At the cottage, Clarissa gasped at its decayed appearance. Gray soot covered the cottage. Cobwebs draped the windows. Spiders hung everywhere. She actually lives here? Asked Clarissa. Oh, yes, it just shows how evil she is, but because only an evil person can live in such a dump, said Jacques. I can see light from a candle coming through the cracks, so she must be up. I'll knock. Clarissa stepped up to the door and knocked. She could hear shuffling steps coming to the door. From behind the door, a crackling voice asked, Who is it? My name is Clarissa, and I'm here on behalf of a friend. Jacques smiled, happy that Clarissa identified him as a friend. What is the name of your friend? Asked the crackling voice behind the door. His name is Jacques. Do you remember him? The witch swung open the door, stared Clarissa straight in the eyes, and said, Don't you ever say his name again to me. Clarissa stumbled backward from the power of the witch's voice. She composed herself and said, I won't, but he's here and he needs your help. He doesn't need my help, she scowled. He needs to be banished. Jacques remained silent, frozen in fear. Okay, I see that you are angry with him, but why can't he just be turned back into a person? You ask why? She shrieked. You're asking why that rotten pumpkin can't be turned back into a person? I'll tell you why. Because he's rotten. Dare I ask why he's rotten? Because he broke my niece's heart. Jacques interrupted. That was a misunderstanding. Your niece Matilda is a lovely woman. She just wasn't my type. Your type, spat the witch. Just what is your type? She asked, looking at him with a sneer. I just couldn't get past the hat made of a beehive on top of her head. I'm sorry, but it was a distraction. And the bees, they chased me. That beehive hat is a family heirloom that we are very proud of, she scoffed. Jacques, you'll remain a pumpkin so that you can learn what it feels like to be orange and round. She slammed the door shut. Okay, that didn't go well, said Clarissa. I'm doomed to be a pumpkin. Let's go. Nothing will change tonight. We can go to my house and sit on the porch where we'll come up with a plan, offered Clarissa. She placed him in the wheelbarrow and wheeled him to her village all the way to the porch of her house. She sat him on a chair and sat herself in another chair. Well, Jacques, sorry my plan didn't work. My situation is hopeless. Jacques looked longingly at Clarissa. Even though I'm still a pumpkin, I'm glad I get to spend this beautiful evening with you. Clarissa laughed. I wouldn't say I'm glad that I'm sitting on my porch in the middle of the night with you, but it has been an entertaining evening. You definitely aren't boring. I try not to be. They both laughed. Their laughter was broken by the appearance of a dark figure without a head walking up to the porch. Clarissa panicked. Who's that? That is the headless horseman, gasped Jacques. Oh no, what do we do? Asked Clarissa. The figure standing at least 7 feet tall, dressed in all black and white with a cape, all in black with a cape, stood in front of them and pointed at Jacques. Jacques, why is he pointing at you? He wants me to be his new head, but I don't want anything to do with him. He's a bad dude. The headless horseman reached his hands toward Jacques to pick him up, but before he could grab Jacques, Clarissa grabbed the broom on the porch and swung it at him with such force that she fell backwards onto the ground. Jacques panicked. Clarissa, are you okay? He turned to the headless horseman. This is all your fault that she fell. You'll regret showing up here, he vowed. Jacques began spinning, building up so much speed that he could barely be seen, and then he launched himself at the headless horseman, knocking the horseman to the ground. Jacques whistled for the black horse with red eyes to come forward, which it did, and Jacques ordered the horse to remove the headless horseman. The horse gripped the cape of the horseman with its mouth and dragged the horseman away into the dark. Clarissa stood up, still shaken by the incident, and said, Jacques, you saved us. The witch is wrong. You're not rotten. You could have broken into a million pieces when you threw yourself at the headless horseman. You risked your life for me. She picked him up and hugged him. As she hugged him, a flash of light emitted from Jacques, causing Clarissa to release him and jump back. The light became the shape of a man, and then all went black. When her eyes regained focus, she saw a young man. Jacques, is that you? The young man patted his arms, touched his face. Clarissa, it's me. He held out his arms. I'm a person again. Clarissa hugged him, happy to see Jacques as a person. The spell was broken. So thank you for listening to my reading.
Thank you so much for that lovely story. So perfect time of the year for it, Halloween coming up. Next up, we have Sophia Barber. I do want to make a quick announcement. We have 2 more people after Sophia, so we are going to go a little bit over time, but please stay patient. They're wonderful stories that I want everyone to hear. So please, it'll probably be about 10 minutes over time. Thank you. I'll just lean down a little. I'm a little taller than most, so I'll just go down here. Oh, really? Okay, good, good. So I have a little short story, and it's part of a sort of longer story, but in order to fit the word count, I just took this little section here. It's called The Eclectic Healer of Ilmohen. The city of Ilmohen was exactly what Adarin expected it to be. It was every bit of shimmering elegance and unnecessary haughtiness that made up its residents. It's not a place that a wolf pack and their elven riders would necessarily fit in. He could feel every stare behind gossamer curtains and around the side of oaken doors. The openness of the High Elves' street was unnerving, to say the least. Even in Wood Elf settlements, there was tree cover and greenery with enough substance to shield from attacks, were it to come. But here, now will you consider that this may be a trap? Reuven, Adarin's second-in-command, quips from beside him. The pack leader turns his head enough to send him a scathing glare. Fine, fine, Reuven relents, holding up his hands in defeat. I get it. The safety of our pack comes second to your girlfriend. At the mention of Phelan, Adarin looks down at the woman asleep in his lap. He'd secured her as best he could given her unconscious state. His wolf was more than big enough for the 2 of them, but he had to take extra precautions with Phelan's injuries. At the moment, she was curled up in front of the pack leader with her head resting against his chest. Phelan's sleeping face held a tranquility that Adarin had never seen her wear before. She was usually so abrasive. He couldn't help but wonder if the peacefulness was due to her sleeping or the poison slowly inching its way through her body, held off only by the comatose state she'd fallen into not long after being injured. They were here in this city because of her. Before Phelan had passed out from the poisoned arrow, she'd clutched Adarin's arm tightly, mumbling her instructions. Ilmohen, find healer. Eleonora, she whispered. There was a fear and urgency in her eyes he'd never seen before. Whoever this Eleonora was, they must be trustworthy or good or both. Phelan was not the type to trust easily. She was more likely to gnaw off her own leg before allowing another person to help her out of a bear trap. Well, this looks to be the place. Reuven's words snapped Adarin out of his thoughts. In front of them stood the healer's shop, though by Ilmohen's standards, it was a hovel.
When the group had first arrived in Ilmohan after several days' travel, they had asked the first high elf they saw about a healer by the name of Eleonora. He was about as helpful as the second, third, and fourth high elf they came across. The residents of Ilmohan were skeptical that a pack of over a dozen wild elves could have anything to do in their illustrious city, but strangely enough, mentioning Eleonora didn't warm them to their cause. They didn't want to be bothered by whatever the batty doctor was doing. Adarin's patience was wearing thinner and thinner with the people of Hilmohan. He didn't care how crazy a doctor may be. Phelan was dying. The least these high elves could have done was refer them to a new healer, but no. It took Adarin practically threatening an older man watering his flowers before they finally got the directions they needed to Eleanor's house. But now that it was right in front of them, all the comments about the healer being nutty were finally sinking in. What type of a person did Phelan trust? The pack approaches the front yard behind Adarin. The house is much less gaudy than the typical high elf abode. It's a simple cobblestone cottage, complete with a garden full of flowers, vegetables, and herbs growing out of planter boxes under the windows. The common themes in high elf architecture were nowhere to be found. Instead of paintings of the sky, glorious battles from legends, or flowing designs depicting elven history, there were flowers and ivy covering every inch of the outer walls. Silver baubles and wind chimes glint between the leaves and flowers, like birds and creatures left them as gifts to the keeper of the house. It was obvious Eleonora didn't seem to care about fitting in with the other high elves. This house looks like it belongs to a human instead of an elf. It stands out, just like the pack. Reuven's wolf leans down to sniff at a stray purple flower poking out between the cobblestones leading up to the front door. The wolf sneezes violently, nearly tipping Reuven off its back. Reuven curses and dismounts, not risking another jostle. Adarin dismounts his wolf, careful not to drop Phelan. He approaches and gestures for Reuven to knock on the door. Reuven looks offended at having to help at all. After a silent battle, Adarin wins, and the defeated second pounds on the door. There's no answer. He knocks again. This time, the only response is the sound of a muffled crash. Reuven turns to look at Adarin, brow quirked. Adarin shrugs back, just as confused. There's still no answer. Adarin scowls, deciding that if no one answers in the next 10 seconds, he would give up on Phelan's request and find some other doctor. They couldn't wait any longer. Her condition is too severe. Then, right as he was about to tell Reuven to knock again, the door swings open and a head pops out. Owlish blue eyes behind silver-framed glasses stare at Reuven with open curiosity. The woman tilts her head and looks past him at the rest of the wild elves and their wolves. Interestingly, her gaze does not harden with suspicion. Instead, she coos in awe and steps further out from behind the door. Adarin opens his mouth to ask if she was Eleonora, but the woman's gaze settles on Phelan's sleeping form and she gasps, flinging the door open completely. Adarin flinches and takes a step back as the strange elf lunges forward. "Phelan!" she gasps. "Oh my goodness, what happened to you?" With strength Adarin didn't think she had, the elven woman, Eleonora, grabs him by the shirt and drags him inside. The edge of her platinum blonde braid nearly whips him in the face as she swings around. Come in, we haven't a moment to lose. Tell me everything that happened to her. Details matter." Adarin distantly hears Reuven order the rest of the pack to wait outside as he follows them in. The inside of the cottage is even more unusual than the outside. Clutter is the unspoken cardinal sin of any elf, and yet every inch of the house is crammed with hanging herbs, colorful fabrics, and glittering vials of various materials. The blonde woman leads Adarin and Reuven between towering bookshelves and around a corner towards a much more orderly room with a raised bed in the center, her lab, apparently. She gestures for Adarin to set Phelan down on the bed before scurrying over to a nearby countertop and rocking around. Adarin does as instructed, as Reuven leans against the only section of wall that isn't a window or covered in tapestry. The second in command picks up a small ceramic buck figurine. "So," he drawls as he inspects the buck, "you are Eleonora, right? You're a healer?" The woman clicks her tongue and walks over to the bed, a round golden stone in her hand. "Yes, I'm Eleonora, and of course I'm a healer. Didn't Phelan tell you?" Adarin, who had stayed by Phelan's side after he set her down, speaks up. She doesn't tell us much about her past. She keeps things strictly professional. Eleonora's eyes flick down to Adarin and Phelan's joined hands as she scowls. "Uh-huh," she says, clearly not believing them. "So, what caused her current state?" "A poisoned arrow," Adarin explains, a flicker of frustration and pain in his voice. We aren't sure of the type, but it's rare enough that our own healer wasn't able to help. He could only keep her asleep to slow it. Eleonora nods and hums in contemplation. She holds the stone out above and closes her eyes. With a sharp inhale of breath, the stone begins to glow, its rays of light beaming down on Phelan. Eleonora opens her eyes, glowing with the same gold hue. She slowly moves the stone across different sections of Phelan's body. Do you know who shot her? Eleonora asks suddenly, eyes still glowing. Slavers, Darren says. We've been hunting them down for a while. Slavers? Eleonora gawks, the glow in her eyes flickering as her concentration wavers. How did my best friend end up with troublemaking wolf riders like you? Hey, Reuven barks, dropping the buck figurine back where he got it. She's the troublemaker here. We didn't even want to get involved, but she dragged us into it. It's a miracle that it wasn't one of our own who got shot. Adarn glowers at his second in command. Phelan is one of our own, he reminds him, voice low in warning. Reuven scoffs and looks away. She's not even a wild elf. Adarn tightens his grip on Phelan's hand, but before he can tell Reuven that he's sounding an awful lot like a high elf right now, Eleonora gasps and whirls away from the table. What? What is it? Adarn asks with concern. Eleonora hisses as she throws papers and random clippings of leaves around her work table. This is bad. Very, very bad. What were you doing waiting so long to bring her here? She's almost dead. She's dead? Reuven asks. Adarn doesn't miss the hope in his voice. No, almost dead, Eleonora shouts, throwing her hands up in the air. We brought her as soon as we could, Adarn insists. We got lucky that we weren't further away. The elven woman's movements were growing in panic as she searched for whatever it was that she needed. Right here. It was right here, she babbles. Where is it? Where? Aha! She pulls out an obsidian knife with a peculiar metallic hoop at the end of it. Eyes ablaze with determination, she stalks back to Phelan's pale body. Holding up the knife, her eyes begin to glow silver. Her hair raises around her as if wind emanates from the blade. She can be saved, but I'll need you two to hold her down. This could get...
Thank you so much, Sophia. All right. Next, we have Connie Jameson.
Thank you. Greetings from Livermore. I live in Riverside, but I'm up for visiting family. And before this meeting, already attended a 5-year-old's soccer game. My piece is a unique take on a familiar story, Romeo and Juliet. Romeo, rough, tough Rottweiler, a big, bulky boulder of a beast. Juliet, a little Persian pussycat, a fluffy, feminine feline. Perhaps the most mismatched match one could ever imagine. After all, being a cat and a dog, you'd expect them to fight like, well, cats and dogs. But no, there was an instant attraction between these two unlikely lovers. Romeo called her his jewel, perhaps upon seeing her long, silky, shiny fur glistening in the moonlight. Juliet just knew, although Romeo looked menacing, he wasn't that massive mountain of meanness other cats saw. Romeo so wanted to impress his jewel that he stopped rolling in smelly stuff and even suffered the humiliation of getting bathed. Juliet, on the other hand, stopped her constant grooming, licking her long, luxuriant fur, and actually paid attention to Romeo when he came to visit. Families and friends became very worried, and with just cause. Romeo could use Juliet as an appetizer, gone in one bite of that massive mouth. But he wouldn't. He couldn't. He loved her. Juliet could use long, sharp nails to shred his big, bulky body, but she wouldn't. She couldn't. She loved him. Romeo came nightly to stand below Juliet's window and gaze at his princess perched so prettily on her puffy pillow. Juliet stared down at that handsome hunk with love in her eyes. One night, however, Romeo did not make his visit, nor the next, nor the next. Romeo, Romeo, where are you, Romeo? Juliet cried. We know, said her fellow felines. He's out in some junkyard, rummaging through trash cans, getting into fights, growling and howling. He's a dog long gone, Juliet. Though saddened to hear her mournful meows, Juliet's family know it would be an absolute catastrophe to let this love affair continue. So, what happened to Romeo and his visits? How does this strange story of these star-crossed lovers end? Who knows? I don't. Do you?
Thank you so much, Connie. What a lovely story. Thank you for joining us again out of town and came in over Zoom to read for us. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Robert Norman.
Thank you all. This is from the book Tall Tales, Wicked Lies, and the Awful Truth. The Ambush. The most terrifying ambush of my life took place in my own living room while I was watching late-night TV. I was chuckling at the commentary of the late-night host while stretched out on a retractable bed of my sofa. There was an ashtray resting on my chest. I had both hands clasped behind my head and a lit joint dangling from my lips. My socked feet hung over the end of the bed, and I casually wiggled them from side to side. Now, you may think, as I did, that all was right with the world, but lurking nearby was pain and terror. Now, pain and terror come in many forms, some obvious, some not so obvious. In this instance, they were disguised as an 8-pound ball of feline fleur who answered to the name of Cato. Now, Cato came from a character in a series of movies involving a French police inspector. Cato was the butler who snuck around the house, popping out and attacking the inspector whenever he least expected it. It was a training exercise gone awry. On this particular evening, I was oblivious to the fact that Cato was focusing her attention on my dangling feet. I hadn't noticed her huddled down as low as she could possibly get, advancing across the carpet ever so slowly towards my feet. From my perspective, my feet were just rocking joyfully from side to side while I watched TV. From Cato's perspective, they were a couple of birds wiggling gaily around, blind to the violence she had in mind for them. Well, eventually she got within striking distance. She had no intention of letting her prey escape. With blinding speed, she sprung, her claws fully extended as they closed around my right foot, sinking deeply into it. The sudden pain was excruciating. I opened my mouth, sucking the joint into my throat. In reflex, I swallowed, sending the burning tip sliding down my gullet. I coughed and howled, both at the same time. Cato instantly came out of her attack mode. Frightened by my screaming pain, she retracted her claws to make an escape, just as my foot jerked up. She was launched off my foot, flipping straight up into the overhead ceiling fan. Lucky it wasn't running. I rolled off the couch, choking and gagging, cigarette ash and butts billowing in the air. The ashtray knocked the small lamp on the end of the table off. The lamp hit the floor, breaking the filament of the bulb. The room was cast in darkness. Gasping for breath and in pain, I glanced around the room. The only thing I could see was the TV. The audience was laughing at something the host had said. The host was looking into the camera gleefully. He seemed to be looking straight at me. The host's smile and laughter of the audience made me furious. I wanted to grab something to throw at the TV screen, but I couldn't see anything in the darkness of the room. I reached for the light switch on the wall and flicked it on. The ceiling fan came on at the same time. There was this loud meow. I looked up to see Cato perched on a fan blade, slowly spinning. starting to rotate. She was in complete terror, frantically looking for a place to jump to. As I leaned against the wall, the tallest, nearest thing to her was me. Her meow became a howl as she started her second revolution. Frightened as she was, unaccustomed to motion as she was still able to jump and land, all four paws, on my head. Of course, to assure that she wouldn't skid off her landing spot, she had extended every claw of every toe of every paw, fully extended. If it had been filmed, it would have looked like some quick bounce off of my head. She went from my head to the sofa and out of the room before I could reach up to protect myself. I fell to the sofa, shouting out profanity. I wasn't sure what to grab first, my scald, my seared throat, my bleeding foot, or my punctured head. After a moment of wailing and agony, I gathered my composure and staggered into the kitchen for a glass of water to soothe my throat. With that done, I looked at my foot. The sock seemed to have absorbed most of the blood. I turned my attention to my head. When I rubbed my fingers over it, it came away smeared with blood. I limped down the hall to the bathroom into the medicine cabinet. I got a fleeting glimpse of Cato dashing between the doorway and the hall. In the bathroom, I toweled off the top of my head and my damaged foot and treated the cuts and punctures with antiseptic. I used a mirror to look down my throat, and I swear there was a trail of blisters going all the way down my gullet. I went back to the kitchen for a bottle of bourbon that I kept stashed there. First swig stung my blistered throat so badly I didn't dare take another. Finally settled down, I went back to the living room, set the lamp back on the table, and folded the bed back into the sofa. I tried to relax, but I couldn't. I was focused on keeping my feet still while afraid of another attack. I usually smoke to relax, but my throat hurt so much I didn't want to light another joint. As the evening progressed, I found myself constantly flinching around, looking for Cato, fearing she was trying to sneak in another attack. I'm not sure when I finally fell asleep. It was morning when I next opened my eyes. I was still sitting on the couch, my feet flat on the floor. As I looked around, I saw Cato at the door. She was purring, her legs curled under her, her tail twitching menacingly. She was looking ready to pounce me again. Since that night, I haven't pulled the bed out of the sofa, nor had a smoke while watching TV. However, Cato has not been the only victor. I, too, have had my moments of glee. Whenever I see Cato trying to sneak into the room, I reach up and flip on the wall switch. As a light comes on, the fan starts to spin. Cato hunches down, gives me a hiss, and flees the room. That is a small victory, but a victory all the same. I keep a vigilant watch for her now, watching to catch her sneaking up in another attempt of a retaliatory ambush. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, that concludes the second annual JoLynne Buehring Memorial Prose Reading. Thank you, everyone who submitted. Can we please give everyone who read another round of applause? It's been a wonderful year, and I hope to see you all again for next October's Prose Reading. One last announcement from me for anyone in the room or anyone over Zoom. Again, October is the month that you can do your next year's membership renewal. So please send them into our PayPal, write me a check, send it to our PO box, anything of that sort. All that information's on the website. Thank you guys so much.
What wonderful readings. I was back there laughing. I hope I wasn't disturbing anybody. Oh, I'll turn it down because I'm shorter than everybody else. Very quickly, our next meeting isn't until January. So sign up on the website, get involved in the community online, on the forums. Support Kevin because he has done so much work, and we all need to get on there and be part of that community. Our next meeting is January 20th, right here in this room. Karen DeBonis, who is one of our members, will be speaking on marketing, and it should be really good. She does a really good talk on self-marketing, self-promotion. That's about it. If after the meeting, we will be adjourning to Emilio's for lunch. For anyone here, I'm sorry all of you on Zoom won't be able to make it. Have a wonderful holiday season and see you in 2024. Thank you. Sophia, stop the recording, will you? Can you stop the recording? Upper left.